Another great day it is with the Crotchety Old Men podcast. Hello, I'm Gary Smith, one of the hosts of the Crotchety Old Men podcast. In the studio with me today is my partner, George Crumley. And as a matter of fact, George, top of the day to you.
Morning, Smitty. How you doing this morning?
Brother, I'm doing exceedingly well. Life is good. Matter of fact, it gets gooder and gooder every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, this stuff is getting so good. I mean, I was just, we were talking earlier about the podcast we did last week on good debt and bad debt. I've gotten so many calls and emails and it's been so enlightening to our audience. And, just to keep with that flavor, we just got to keep providing information and education to our audience. And here again today, man, we got a special guest.
Oh yeah, that's why the word's getting around, man, in the studio here that we have a very special guest today, and I'm excited because I got 2 books and 3 ink pens, and I'm ready. Okay, take notes.
Well, with a build-up like that, I hope I don't disappoint you.
I'm sure you won't. Well, without further ado, we just want to introduce. He's a graduate of Purdue University with a degree in economics. He's a former #1 overall draft pick of the Golden State Warriors back in 1980, a former professional NBA player who spent 10 seasons in the NBA, currently a wealth and investment advisor, author, and artist. And in 1993, founded the Carroll Group, a wealth advisory company located here in Atlanta, where he advises high-end net worth families and professional athletes. Without further ado, Mr. Joe Barry Carroll, welcome.
Sometimes we should stop after the introduction because you can only go. Sometimes you can only go backwards after that. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Super.
Yeah,
We are so glad to have you.
Well, absolutely, Joe. I've been a fan of the Golden State Warriors ever since I've seen you on the court, man, and shooting those jumpers and stuff. And
Are you old enough for that, man? That's a while back. That was back with the dinosaurs.
I know. Well, I'm one of the dinosaurs. That's why we call ourselves Crotchety Old Men. Okay.
All right.
So making that transition, though, I mean, with all the and we're going to come back to this because, we want to talk about basketball, no doubt about it. But
basketball is fine. Basketball is fine with me. I shared with you before. I don't distance myself from basketball. I instead of looking at it as I'm more than a basketball player, I'm a basketball player and all these other things that I do. So it's fine. Wherever you want to go.
All right. Well, my first question is just, how did you get started in the financial realm, though? I mean, as far as wealth advisory and things of that nature.
In 1980, I signed my first professional basketball contract. And that came along with money. And after several years of not being satisfied with the advice I was getting, I decided to do it myself. And so it wasn't just after I stopped playing that went into this. I was doing it while I was a player as well. I'm one of the early guys. All the guys do it now. A lot of the young cats, I'm just so proud of them. They're really fierce. They're everywhere, doing all kinds of things. Back when I played, most players would just sign it over to their agents.
Oh man, that is so good to hear because I've often wondered about that. I mean, with all the money that athletes are making today, I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars today.
Yeah.
I was always curious as to what really, I mean, behind the scenes, are they doing? What type of advice are they getting or receiving?
Some of them are, but I mean, even with that large number, I mean, if you make 100 million and you blow 100 million, you got zero. So some of that, they're not going to all end up in a happy place, but many of them will. And at minimum, you should spend that much money. I mean, if it goes away, then at least you have the comfort of saying, well, I had a hell of a good time when I did it.
Oh, that makes sense now. Yeah. Because if you're going to make that type of money, you certainly want to have something for yourself. So another question, Joe, is this. Now, in lieu of, it's on top of everybody's mind, particularly with the debacle, if you want to call it that, with the banks. And I want to kind of touch on that and ask you a question before George shoots in here. what are your takes with this bank situation that happened out in Silicon Valley? Any comments about that?
Well, it certainly encourages us to not go over that $250,000 threshold that FDIC covers. I think they're still sorting it out. I usually will wait a few beats after something like that has happened to find out what really happened, because right now you just have a loop of speculation about what happened and why it happened and so on. But I think for people who are under the insurance maximum, I think they'll be okay. The rest of that stuff we've got to sort out over time, because this has been unusual, for us for years to be worried about a run on the bank or a bank failure that results in clients or patrons actually losing assets.
Yeah. So with that in mind, as you build a client's portfolio, obviously you don't think of building it with, something like a bank collapse or anything like that, but you do still have to build it with some type of protection, regardless if you're a multimillionaire or you're, a multi-thousandaire, because, investing from, that principle of investing and the principle of protection goes regardless of the amount of money you have. So just kind of give us an idea of how you go about building protection into a portfolio for a client.
Well, I would offer initially that my real responsibility is to preserve wealth. The people that I work with might have anywhere from $5 to $40 million. So they're already financially independent. My mission is to maintain that financial independence, to preserve the wealth, and to provide them an opportunity, a withdrawal rate that will allow them some level of safety. And for us, it's usually around 4 or 5% of the value of the portfolio. So you invest the assets across domestic, international, large, medium, small companies. And the assumption is that that portfolio will grow in line with what has happened historically, which all caveats are past rates are no guarantee for the future, but it's kind of a good place to begin the conversation. And so if I can get a client to withdraw at a reasonable rate, we have the opportunity to partner with compounding rates of return that will preserve them and create wealth for them in their lifetime, as well as if they, depending on what their family dynamic is, they may be able to leave money for those that follow, for those people and institutions that are important to them that follow.
Excellent. I'm thinking.
Did I answer your question?
Oh, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We're on a good path here in terms of the preservation of wealth. And I know that, like ourselves, when you approach age 72, for those investors or people who have institutional pension funds or 401ks, things of that nature, where they have to make withdrawals now. From a tax perspective, does that have any impact upon your clients in terms of taxes, as in regards to the preservation of that wealth and when they pull it out?
I'm not overly sensitive to taxes. I mean, it does hurt my feelings as it does annually when I have to write a check. And when I was a player, I used to joke that, man, they didn't even play the game with me. I just, but somebody's got to pay for the fire department, the police department, and good government and that type of thing. So in some ways, you have to behave in an enlightened manner about taxes because they're inevitable. Even if you put them off, they will catch up with you. So let's get past that. Let's just, pay what you owe and be done with it. I'm more interested in the asset allocation and the diversification of the portfolio. And if we pay taxes, if we have to pay taxes, then we just do. It's a good thing, because if you make $1 million and you have to pay $400,000 or $500,000 in taxes, you still got $500,000 left. So focus on what you have left as opposed to what you have to pay in order to enjoy this democracy we all participate in.
Amen. Amen.
That's a good point. Good point. So let's to kind of stay on that. So, for example, a lot of our listeners are approaching that ripe old age of retirement. We're lucky enough to have already been there for several years. But one of the things we like to do is we like to try to give some type of, semblance or direction as far as what kind of things that they need to look for. So from your perspective, someone reaching retirement, what's kind of the roadmap that you use for that diversification of a portfolio that will allow a client to, live comfortably until those golden ages?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, that's a difficult question to answer because it depends upon what their appetite is with respect to spending, how they want to live, how much money they began with, what they expect to have at the end. I mean, it's a very complicated question. I think that's why you'll hear most advisors say, I don't give advice over the air on television because they can't really. I mean, in addition to that, it may be not appropriate, but they really can't because there are so many factors. Garrett tell you that when he does intake for his clients, he has to go through all their details in order to understand it. I think as a general rule, though, you got to make a connection between your behavior and the outcome.
Very well.
It's nothing's magical about this. This is just math. This is purely math. It's unusual that you're going to have these tremendous outcomes when you don't make a connection between the choice you made.
Right. Just a personal thought here. What is your feelings or thought in terms of cryptocurrencies? We hear so much about this, and certainly younger people are just gravitated all over it. Some of us, not all of us, retirees or what have you, are very embracive of the crypto world. But what are your thoughts in terms of cryptocurrency?
I'm still trying to sort it out. I don't own crypto. I certainly don't advise it to any of my clients. One of the main challenges one of the big answers I'm trying to find out is generally an investment has to be a thing or a service. And I'm not clear on what the thing or service is with crypto now. And I'll hurry to say that I know so little about it, but I think it's okay to wait and let a thing play itself out. It's like when they storm the beaches, there's a whole row of dead folk in that first wave of people who hit the beach. And maybe you should wait till that fourth or fifth wave to where there's some normalization of it to understand it a little better. Right now, I don't know enough about it. I'm not even sure if other people know about it because what I hear mostly is people talking about the astronomical returns that the first movers got, but no one's talking about the fundamental nature of blockchain technology and crypto and this type of thing. So I'm waiting for all that stuff to settle down to try to figure out what it is. And I tell people all the time, I say, you may make a whole bunch of money while I'm trying to figure this out. And that's okay because that's just the way it works. You take that chance, maybe you win, maybe you lose, but I'm not prepared to do that right now. Especially understand the people that I work with as well as myself, because I'm a client, we're already at a certain place financially, investment-wise. Why would you put yourself at risk and you're already financially independent? Many of the people I work with, they have more money than they're going to spend. They really have an estate problem. Who will receive this money when I die? Who will receive the residue of this when I die? Why put assets at risk? And they are at risk in these very volatile asset groups. Why do that when you can because we do a lot of indexing on my side because those returns are very attractive to me.
Interesting, because as I listen to you talk, it makes me think that wealth management is no more than putting somebody on a budget.
Well, I think people who are financial independent, they talk about it with respect to target spending. They think budgets is kind of it's something beneath them, although it's not. It's the same thing. But I think you do have to, not so much of a budget, but you do need to draw a connection between the decisions you make and the outcomes you're likely to receive. Because most things that have been around for a while, there's historical data that gives you an indication of what your expectations should be around, what the rates of returns are on that. It won't guarantee it, but it does give you an indication. And sometimes it's just a matter of math, whether you can get there from here,
No,
You're going into town. Are you going to walk to town? Are you going to drive to town? Are you going to take a helicopter to town? It all depends. And there are benefits and burdens with each method of transportation.
One of the things that we've had to somewhat experience is kind of a transition of our lives, as far as for me, for example, from a corporate environment, now to more of a entrepreneurial relationship with what I do on a day-to-day basis, what I do, my relationship with my money and things of that nature. Let's talk a little bit about your transition. The mindset of how did you transition from this great basketball player to someone I would say less notable and more into a more of a 9 to 5 type of environment where you're now dealing with individuals on a different type of platform. How did that work for you? What were some of your challenges?
Well, I'd introduce the topic with saying no player ever retires, because retirement is voluntary. Uh, you're not invited back at some point as a player. You're going to run out of guaranteed contracts. Teams are going to lose curiosity about you, because that's all it is a series of curious teams is wondering if they can get something from you that either you've demonstrated before or that they know something about you that you may not even know about yourself. But at some point, that whole narrative runs out. So you're not invited back. So you're like you're being run out of town. You act like you're leading the parade. So you said, you can't fire me, I quit. But what I recommend to my guys, and I have some professional football players that I work with now, is that I want you to not look at your salary, because that's going to go away. We don't know whether it's going to be at the end of this contract or the next contract, but it will go away. What I would prefer you set your spending at is what your assets are in this with your investments, what your investment portfolio is, and then use a factor of 4, 5, or 6%, depending upon what their personal circumstance is. And that's how you set it. So from a practical standpoint, we're trying to encourage lifestyles that can be sustained off of some factor of the portfolio, the investment portfolio, because you can own, say, the United States stock market. You can own that indefinitely, but you won't be a star football or basketball player indefinitely. Only people that stick around there forever are the owners and the fans. But the players, at some point as a player, you realize they're cheering for the fabric. It's not who's in the fabric. It's whoever's wearing the fabric and go out on the field. They're great. And the fans, and that's the way it works. So you can't feel sorry for yourself. You got to, put your big boy pants on and realize this is just a reality, and just enjoy it as long as you can. But at some point, you're going to be living off your investments. And then those investments, you have to withdraw them at a rate that is sustainable. Because if you're too aggressive with your withdrawal rate from your investment portfolio, you're going to end up with zero.
That's an interesting perspective. And I guess it leads me to think, okay, so obviously the clients that you're dealing with, you're probably managing their portfolio prior to them coming to that decision of, like I said, not being called back. So can you kind of walk us through how does that conversation go, with a quote unquote, star athlete that's trying to make that decision as far as, is this over? I want to keep playing, like you see, like a Tom Brady, he's 40 and he's still playing, and you think, okay, well, guy, you've made more than enough money. So how does that conversation go as far as when an athlete gets to that point?
I don't know. It's different things for different people. When you get to the end, you kind of know it because you move. You're not able to do at will what you once did at will. So you know it a little bit, but ball players are usually the last ones to know that their career is over. Because of the way we're constructed, you have to believe your own, what does this guy say? You got to get high off your own supply. You've got to believe that you are all these things that you once were until it's over. So that's another reason why you should look at your assets as opposed to your player contract, is because it's going to pass away and you may be the last one to know. So your feelings are going to be hurt when it's time to go. But what you have to be in a position is that it's just hurt feelings. It doesn't mean you're going to have to change your lifestyle. Now, if you choose to do that, if you choose to live beyond your means, then that's a choice you've made. You just shouldn't expect to sustain that. If you were living off of a contract and your assets and your non-savings, then you should not expect to have money. And that's okay, because that's a choice that adults should make for themselves. But you can't make a decision to overspend and at the same time expect money to be there. And that sounds, and it is simple-minded, because it is just that simple. If you're withdrawing at 20, 30%, 25% a year of what your assets are, that means you got 4 years of lifestyle left. Maybe. It just depends on how you're going to handle this. I just tell the young people I work with, just make the connection. If you want to, go out in a blaze of glory, then that's a choice you're making. I can't tell them otherwise. I don't have control. I don't have, a general power of attorney to where I can shut them down. I can't. Sometimes I can only try to protect them from themselves, but ultimately it's their decision, because I have to respect their agency and authority, because I actually work for them. They tease me sometimes. Oh, Joe, we work together. I said, no. The way you know that I work for you is because you can fire me. Your name is on my check. So that means anybody who I write a check to, they work for me. And the same thing is for my clients.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely confirmed, how I started out, as far as saying, whether you got, millions of dollars or whether you got hundreds of $1,000s, it's the same type of mindset that you have to have. I mean, you have a finite dollar amount or amount of assets, and you have to figure out, once you get into that quote unquote retirement age, how you're going to spend it. And it's totally up to you, even as an advisor.
Yeah, and the parallels are there, though. I know I work with high net worth families, but for instance, people who are living a more conventional life, let's say, where they're they're maxing out on their 401ks, they're mindful of what type of vehicle they drive, the neighborhood they live in. At some point, maybe their career is over, or that an industry will fade out. They have to decide, am I going to, what am I going to do? Because if I have a lifestyle to where I've worked 2 shifts and just to keep up, now all I'm left with is perhaps Social Security and a small savings. It's the same thing. It's just larger numbers.
Exactly.
Very good stuff. I'm telling you, this is, ladies and gentlemen, if you all are not bright, I done filled up one pad. I'm on my second one now. So, but Joe, just not so much of a big shift, but this transition, as I heard George read your bio, and there's a lot to there's a lot that encompasses Joe Barry Carroll, and I heard the part about the artists, and so I'm curious to know the artistic value of Joe Barry Carroll, the artistic part of him. I want to know more about that. As your artist. I mean, can you share with us, that facet of who Joe Barry Carroll is?
Well, I think we're all creatives, actually. Some of us act upon it, some of us don't, and even those who act upon it, everybody will not make it public. I jumped in about 8 years ago, painting and writing books. Not overly concerned about what criticism I may receive, because it's one of the things that you do get a little hardened, or you're not quite as sensitive to criticism when you live a public life, because somebody's always writing stuff. 70% or 80% of the people that have written about me, I've never met them, don't know them. Some of them aren't even old enough to have recalled my career, but they all have an opinion. So once you accept that, you know that, hey, I can do whatever I want. They're going to talk anyway. I may as well get something out of this. So I began to paint, and I initially started painting because I wanted to put together a kind of a great art collection. I've collected art over the years, mostly emergent artists, but I wanted to go and buy some famous artists' work, but I didn't want to just do it without preparation or understanding. So I started doodling around on the board with acrylic paint. And over time, after, within that first year, I discovered that, I had something. And it's just gotten better and better over the years. And I'm pretty good at it, now. And it continues, though, because it's a practice. You never stop. I mean, you never stop learning. You never stop growing. The board that's across the room for me now is something it's a great puzzle that it's always a solution. You're trying a problem that you're trying to gain a solution to. So it's always something, but I think it gives you another reason to get out of bed and get going in the morning. And that's important because we all need something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our audience will probably be a little upset with us if we didn't ask a couple of basketball questions. So,
Okay.
On the top of my head is, so what was your aha moment, your welcome to the NBA moment?
Signing a contract because
really.
Up until then, it was just an idea. Up until then, it was an idea, but actually, I had my second NBA contract because I had 4 years with the Warriors. Then I went to Europe to play for a year because they held me out. Some people say that I held out, but I think if they had paid me correctly, I would not have held out. So they held me out, and I went to Europe for a year. I was one of the first player to go in mid-career like that. Players had always threatened to go, but none of them ever went. They'd usually come back to the team and take a lower amount, or they got what they want. I got neither. So I went to Italy. I played in Milan for a year. When I came back, and I'm getting to your question, I promise. I'm like an old Southern preacher. I know. I'm taking a long way around. But I signed a contract that was the contract of my career when I came back from Europe in year 6, what would have been year 6. And that just really left an impression upon me that I felt like I had some type of authority in the direction that I would go from here. I wouldn't just be, I was going to be playing for fun after that, not to make a living or to, attend to my personal commitments.
Okay, so
I'm not sure.
All right,
but on the financial side, on the basketball side, I think it's pretty much when you go out on that floor. My first exhibition game, I came to the team when I was a rookie in 1980. We had gone to the Final Four, and then I had my long summer, and there was a delay in getting my contract done. But I came to Oakland, and we had a game. The team, they carry on without you, as they are now, carrying on without me. But my first game was against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a professional player. And I just went at him. And it was funny because it looked really courageous, but I had no choice. I had to try to dunk on him because otherwise he's gonna block my shot or whatever. And I just did, and he fouled me. The place went wild, and I'm looking at him going like, wow, I just tried to dunk on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so that was a big deal. And it just goes on from there because you meet all these cats that are just incredible. Oscar Robinson, Kareem, you're having dinner with Julius Erving, you're, Magic I knew when we were in college. So, I mean, all of these cats and, it's still, you never get used to it. Even now, I'm 65 this year, and I still, can't believe that when the late Bill Russell might see me across the room and he'd acknowledge me. At our height, we can kind of see over other people. So he's waving at me, and I might make my way over to him and hug him and that kind of thing. That was a big deal. That you never get over that because all men want to be ball players. Most men, they want that. They admire an athlete's journey. They're not quite sure what it is because it's much different than they think it is, but they do admire it, and to live it is a big deal.
Wow, great information. I have a question here, though, Joe. And, we talk about the accolades and all the upside and the good times and the good things. What in your career, whether it be basketball or as an investment advisor, whatever, what has been your biggest challenge or maybe your biggest disappointment, if you will? And how did you address or how did you overcome that?
Generally speaking, you got to keep moving because a public life is not easy. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to have people opining, having opinions of you that you've never met, that don't understand what's going on. And especially in this current environment, people will snipe at you. And you got to get over your feelings because for me, the reward, not only the money, but the lifestyle, the people I've met, I've had, dinner with Nelson Mandela and stuff. It's just the price you pay. So I try not to be a whiner about whatever criticism or hostility you find, because that's just the way it is. No matter who think about it. LeBron James is criticized. Now this man, he has checked every box possible. Now you may not like his style of play perhaps, or some silly superficial thing, but this cat is a boss. He's educating children. From all appearance, he's a great family guy. He's got pictures with him and his wife and his children. He's spending time with them. All of his off days, he's sitting with his children at some game or something. And there are people who just have all kind of horrible things to say. And I'm going like, where do you get that from? And how do you land on that with LeBron James? So anybody who has any criticisms of any player, they should look at people like LeBron and go like, wow, if you're going to criticize him, you're probably going to criticize you're not going to be happy. You're just not going to be happy because this guy is, he's phenomenal. But it's part of public life, and you can't have it both ways. You can't wallow in the praise and adulation and not know that this other stuff is coming as well. Plus, it pays pretty good.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, George,
we can't get away without asking the GOAT question. Okay, so regardless of how we at least need to know who he thinks the GOAT. Having played in the era with Magic and and Michael, and now having LeBron and these guys. And Kobe, and who do you think, or how do you address that question? Who's the GOAT?
I think it's a period piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think first of all, I think it's just fun to have the conversation because sports fans, that's what they do. Barbershops all over the world. This is a conversation they have, and guys who are waiting courtside to come up next for their game at the league, at the recreation center. This is what they're talking about. It's just fun to talk about, to gossip. This is our testosterone gossip. I don't know that it's possible to really say who's the greatest of all times because everybody's playing within their era. Whoever was great in the 50s, it's a different set of circumstances. And like for instance, I'm an inside player. I played for the 12,000 points I scored. I don't know. I'm sure 11,500 of them came from within 10, 15 feet of the basket. I'd struggle right now with these young cats because it's a perimeter game now. They're shooting 30 and 40. I mean, they got a contest going now to see who can shoot a jumper over after they cross half court, and I never spent time out there because I couldn't make any money out there. But I would wear somebody's ass out anywhere within that paint. They're in trouble. So I think that it depends upon the era you're playing and the way they played back on the parquet floor back in the 50s. Is just so different than the guys are playing in the 60s or the 70s. So I think it should just be a fun conversation. I don't know that I really have an answer to that in terms of who's the greatest player. I know certainly you should get somebody's attention if you've scored more points than anybody ever in the history of basketball. So there's a conversation that said LeBron and Kareem and Magic and Larry and Michael and all of these people, and not necessarily in that order. And that's not the whole list, but they all should be considered because it's incredible. You, as a player, I think you even have a higher appreciation for what that means because that's every night. That's over 30,000 points. That's 5 or 6 championships. And the season is very long. We played 10 exhibition games, 82 regular season games, and you can almost be popping firecrackers on the 4th of July before the season is over. And it's an achievement just to be in that conversation. So that long-winded answer I gave you is I don't know, hell. I mean, they're all great. If they play that long, guys playing 15, 20 years, that's the greatest of all times. You just pick a category and have fun with it.
There you go. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to say, I mean, this conversation has been a pleasure, and you've been a great, guest, and the information you provided, to us and to our audience has been very valuable and definitely, highlights what we normally talk about on the Crotchety Old Men podcast, and provide information and education.
Well, I would encourage everybody everywhere to just, work on your habits, work on, develop good habits, and make a connection between the choice you make, because everybody's not going to be a millionaire. It's not even necessary for everybody to be a millionaire, because some people can get by quite well without $1 million or 10 or $100 million. I'm sure that your listeners are saying, well, I'd love to have that opportunity to find out. But I think you have to develop good habits with whatever you are. I heard this saying that start where you are, work with what you have. Because it's never going to be a perfect time to do any of this. You don't have to have huge amounts of money to do well, but you do have to have some level of discernment and connection. You have to make a connection between the choices that you're making and the results that you're likely to get with those choices. Do not make foolish choices and expect to have wise outcomes. It just doesn't work that way. If you're going to have a good time and blow your money, have a good damn time with it and know that at the end, you're going to be in trouble. But if you don't want to be in trouble, there's just some things you got to do in the meantime. And that's whether you have $100 million or $100. Because I'm telling you now, one of these, you're going to hear it, that there will be someone who earned $500 million from a professional services contract, and they will be bankrupt. Because if they take bad habits into that's what the result will be. But if you take good habits into a situation, you're going to get good results.
Well, there you heard it, folks. Right out the mouth of Joe Barry Carroll. Man, we welcome you. We appreciate you and all that you have brought to the podcast today. I'm telling you, George.
Thank you very much.
Down here, we have been talking for a little while.
Yes. And man, I hate to end it, but we got it. All good things come to an end, as they say sometimes.
Even a good song ends, man.
There you go. Well, hey, anytime you want to come back, you're more than welcome, because I'm sure that we could probably chop it up a little bit more about some of the other subjects because you're bringing a wealth of knowledge, and you're hitting all the boxes that we talk about on the Crotchety Old Men podcast. So here again, thanks again for coming on to the show.
I appreciate the invitation. All the best.
All right. So, at the end of the day, we always end the show with a word from Mr. Smith over here. So what you got for us today, Smitty?
Well, man, Joe making it very tough on me today, man, because he dropped some nuggets. Shoot. However, we'll continue with the tradition. And here's the quote for today. What is typical and comfortable is rarely profitable. Don't follow the herd. So until next time, if you didn't know,
now you know.
We'll see you next show. All right. Peace.
Peace.
This is Dr. Paul Clemens with the Crotchety Old Men podcast. If you're interested in financial tools to build wealth, and you're interested in ways to maximize your health through holistic alternatives, then you are just the audience that we're looking for. Tune in each week, every Thursday, to the Crotchety Old Men podcast, where George Crumley, Gary Smith, and I offer you in-depth discussions on health and wealth. Subscribe to the Crotchety Old Men podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your favorite podcast.